Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Prelims Warm Up. In this episode of Prelims Warm Up, we'll be discussing some previous year questions which were asked in UPSC Prelims 2019. This initiative has been brought to you by Aptiplus Academy for Civil Services, and my name is Shayak Datta. I'm the faculty for Geography and Environment at Aptiplus Academy for Civil Services. So let us start with the first question for today. The first question is a question which was asked from current affairs and which also has some connection with economics as well. So let us have a look at this particular question. This question is with reference to Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, consider the following statements. There are three statements which have been given. Number one, AIIB or the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank has more than 80 member nations. Is that correct? Yes. Second statement, India is the largest shareholder in AIIB or the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Now, is that correct? Well, when it comes to shareholding, if you have some background information regarding AIIB or the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, you should be aware that China is the largest shareholder when it comes to Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. India is the second largest shareholder. So the second statement is actually incorrect. The third statement, AIIB does not have any members from outside Asia. Now that is also incorrect. Just because the name starts with Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, that does not imply that it does not have any member from outside Asia. Okay, so that is also incorrect. Out of the given three statements, we get to see only statement number one is correct, and hence the right option should be A, one only. So let us look at the background as well of this particular bank, AIIB. So as we can see that statement 1 is correct and statement 3 is incorrect, or it is not correct. Now what is this AIIB? It is a multilateral development bank with a mission to improve the social and economic outcomes in Asia and beyond. Currently it has around 97 members and India is one of the founding members. When it comes to statement number 2, that is where we are talking about the shareholding pattern. So India is the second largest shareholder in AIIB, while China is the largest. And the headquarters of AIIB is in Beijing, and it had started or it had commenced its operation in January 2016. Okay, so these are some of the background information that you should be aware of. Number one, that AIIB, if you look at it, it is a multilateral development bank. What is the major objective? To improve the social and economic outcomes in Asia, and not only in Asia but across the world. Currently, it has around 97 approved members, and India is one among the founding members, but it is not the largest shareholder. China is the largest shareholder. Headquarters of AIIB is in Beijing, and it has started its operation in the year 2016. This is with regards to the first question. The second question that you should be aware of, this question was also asked in UPSC examination 2019 prelims. The question is asking, what was the purpose of inter-creditor agreement signed by Indian banks and financial institutions recently? Okay, so what are the options which have been given? A, to lessen the government of India's perennial burden of fiscal deficit and current account deficit. So inter-creditor agreement, is that what it is related to? Answer is no. The second statement that we have, to support the infrastructure projects of the central and the state governments. So is that related to inter-creditor agreement? So answer again is no. Third statement that we have, to act as independent regulator in case of applications for loans of rupees 50 crore or more. Again, we get to see it is not supposed to act like an independent regulator. That is not the function of the inter-creditor agreement, or that is not what inter-creditor agreement is related to. On the other hand, statement number D, to aim at faster resolution of stressed assets of rupees 50 crore or more which are under consortium lending, that is actually correct. So the right answer should be D. And let us look at a little bit of the background details of this inter-creditor agreement. So answer is D, as we can understand. Project Sashakt, it was proposed by a panel which was led by PNB chairman. What is PNB? Punjab National Bank chairman Sunil Mehta. Bad loans of up to rupees 50 crore, bad loans of up to rupees 50 crore will be managed at the bank level within a deadline of 90 days. For bad loans which are more than 50 crore but less than 500 crore, we get to see the banks will enter into an inter-creditor agreement authorizing the lead bank to implement a resolution plan in 180 days. That is the objective. Or refer the asset to NCLT. For loans which are above rupees 500 crore, the panel recommended an independent AMC. When you say AMC, it means asset management company, which is supported by institutional funding through AIF, that is Alternate Investment Fund. Now, we get to see that there has been some updates made to this entire concept of inter-creditor agreement. We get to see RBI has made it mandatory for lenders to enter into an inter-creditor agreement during the review of the borrower account within 30 days from the date of first default to any lender. Okay, so now it has been made mandatory that there should be an inter-creditor agreement amongst the lenders when there is a review of the borrower account, and this kind of a thing should take place within 30 days from the date of the first default to any of the lenders. ICA, that is inter-creditor agreement, it allows banks to decide resolution strategy outside the IBC, that is the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, and it will help lenders to accelerate the process to resolve the stressed assets. Okay, so ICA or the inter-creditor agreement, it allows banks to decide the resolution strategy outside the Insolvency Bankruptcy Code, and we get to see this will help the lenders to accelerate the process in order to resolve this entire issue of stressed assets. Okay, so question number 2B should be the right answer. Inter-creditor agreement, that is for faster resolution of stressed assets of rupees 50 crore or more, okay, when there are a number of lenders involved. The third question that we'll look at is also again from economics, and again something which is sometimes seen in the newspapers. So the question asks, the chairman of the public sector banks are selected by whom? The chairman of the public sector banks. Who selects the chairman of such public sector banks? A, the bank's board bureau. B, the Reserve Bank of India. C, the Union Ministry of Finance. And D, management of the concerned bank. Who selects the chairman of public sector bank? So the right answer should be A, that is bank's board bureau. Okay, that should be the right answer. Now we will look at the details, at the background details of the bank's board bureau. What are the functions of the bank's board bureau? Who selects the chairman and the members of the bank's board bureau? All these things we should be looking at. So it is not just sufficient to know the correct answer, to know the wrong answer, but at the same time you should read around the topic, right? So if the question is simply stating that the bank's board bureau selects the chairman of the public sector banks, but you should also have some background information about this particular body, that is the bank's board bureau. So let us have a look. The bank's board bureau, it recommends for selection of heads of public sector banks and financial institutions, and it helps banks in developing strategies and capital raising plans. The chairman of the bank's board bureau is appointed by the central government. Remember, bank's board bureau, they select the chairman of the public sector banks, but who selects the chairman of the bank board bureau itself? It is selected by the central government. With a view to improve the governance of public sector banks, the government has set up an autonomous banks board bureau, having 3 ex officio members and 3 expert members in addition to the chairman. So how many total? 7. So you have the chairman, and then you have 3 ex officio members, and then we have 3 expert members apart from the chairman. All the members and the chairman, they are part-time. Now, what are the functions of this bank's board bureau? Number 1, it is responsible for the selection and appointment of the board of directors in the public sector banks and the financial institutions. So including whole-time directors and non-executive chairmen. So bank's board bureau, it selects, or it is responsible for the selection and appointment of the board of directors in the public sector banks and the financial institutions. Next, it advises the government on matters relating to appointment, confirmation, or extension of tenure and termination of services of the board of directors of the above mentioned levels. Okay, so it talks. It also decides or it also advises on matters, for example, appointment, confirmation, or extension of tenure and termination of services of the board of directors of the above mentioned levels. Next, to advise the government on the desired structure at the board level and for senior management personnel for each public sector bank and financial institution. Similarly, to advise the government on evolving suitable training and development programs for management personnel in public sector banks and financial institutions. To advise the government on the formulation and enforcement of a code of conduct and ethics for managerial personnel in the public sector banks and financial institutions. Finally, to build a data bank containing data relating to the performance of public sector banks and financial institutions, its senior management and the board of directors, and share the same with the government. These are some of the functions of the Bank Boards Bureau. We will quickly just try to understand what are the important ones. Number one, this is the most important function that you can understand: selection and appointment of the board of directors in the public sector banks and financial institutions. Plus, it is also supposed to advise the government. Advise the government on what? Matters which are related to the appointment, confirmation, or extension of tenure and termination of services of the board of directors of the above mentioned levels. So it will select and appoint, as well as it will also decide whether there should be an extension of tenure or there should be a termination of service of these board of directors or of the people who have been selected in the board of directors. Plus, it also talks about the structure, the desired structure of the board. That also is decided by the Bank's Board Bureau, and it advises the government on the same. Plus, it also advises the government on evolving suitable training and development programs for the management personnel. So, what kind of training and development programs should there be? That is also decided by the Bank's Board Bureau. Similarly, we also get to see the formulation and enforcement of a code of conduct and ethics for the managers of these public sector banks and financial institutions. That is also decided by the Bank's Board Bureau. Finally, we also get to see that building a data bank which will contain data relating to the performance of the public sector banks and financial institutions, plus its senior management and its board of directors. All of this is done by the Bank's Board Bureau, and then it shares this data with the government. So all these are the functions of the Bank's Board Bureau. Okay, so just have some idea who appoints the chairman and the members of the Bank's Board Bureau. It is done by the central government. Mainly the chairman, it is done by the central government. Okay, and the chairman का काम क्या है? Please याद रखना कि Bank's Board Bureau जो body है, उनका ही काम है to select the chairman of the public sector banks and financial institutions. Plus, to also help these banks to develop strategies and basically how to raise capital. So such kind of plans and strategies that will also, and how to create such kind of plans and strategies, that will also be advised by this particular board, Bank's Board Bureau. Okay, so this is with regards to the third question. The fourth question that we have again is something which is very, very relevant for UPSC Prelims 2020 as well, because this asks which one of the following is not a sub-index, of the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index. This was also asked in the year 2019 UPSC Prelims. So World Bank, it will release an index which is called as the Ease of Doing Business Index, and under this index there will be a number of parameters. Okay. Now, what has been asked, when we say sub-index, basically it is referring to a parameter. The parameters on the basis of which this particular index, uska score jiske basis pe calculate kiya jata hai. So what are these sub-indices and which is not one of the sub-indices? That is what has to be found out. A. Maintenance of law and order. B. Paying taxes. C. Registering property. And D. Dealing with construction permits. So you have to select which out of the given four options that we have, which one is not a sub-index under the Ease of Doing Business Index. So out of the given options, we get to see the answer should ideally be A, that is maintenance of law and order. Now, what we are going to do is that not just look at the answer, but also look at what this index stands for, what are the various parameters which are used in this index. And lastly, we will also look at, though this question was asked in the year 2019, but we look at the ease of doing business 2020, the report, and how that is relevant for India. What are the scores which was achieved by India, rank of India, etc. So these are some of the things that we have to focus upon. For example, already we have seen the ease of doing business report. Answer should be A. Now this report, it was introduced when? In 2003. Very, very important. It was introduced in the year 2003. What is the objective? To provide an assessment of objective measures of business regulations and their enforcement across 190 economies on 10 parameters. Now this is very, very important. Okay, this particular ease of doing business index that is measured across 190 economies, and the basis for this index, there are 10 such parameters which form the basis for this index. So this report was introduced in 2003. What is the major objective? To provide an assessment of objective measures of business regulations and their enforcement across 190 economies on 10 parameters affecting a business through its life cycle. What kind of parameters? Those parameters which will affect a business through its life cycle. So these 10 parameters are, let us quickly look at the 10 parameters, and based on the performance of countries across these 10 parameters, the score of a country under this index is decided. So what are the parameters? Number 1, starting a business. Starting a business. Number 2, dealing with construction permits. Number 3, electricity availability. Number 3, electricity availability. Number 4, property registration. Number 5, credit availability. Number 6, protecting minority investors. Number 7, paying taxes. Number 8, trading across borders. Number 9, contract enforcement. And number 10, resolving insolvency. Okay, so there are 10 parameters which are used to find out the score under this particular index. What or how much score should be given to a country, that is decided on the basis of their performance under these 10 parameters. What are the parameters? Number 1, starting a business, how difficult or how easy it is to start a business in a country. Number 2, dealing with construction permits. You can understand, to start a business you would need an area, a factory or an industry you have to create, and so you will need construction permits, and there will be many hurdles along the way, especially when it comes to India. Similarly, electricity availability. Now electricity is a very, very important component, an essential component for any industry or factory to be set up. So you need electrical connections, etc., etc. So that is very necessary. Property registration, in case of India, there's a lot of corruption involved in this process, and hence this is very, very essential that this should go on very smoothly. There should not be any red tapeism in the registration of property. Similarly, credit availability. Well, for any business to go on, it's necessary to get cheap credit. Okay, cheap and easy access to credit. So credit availability, that becomes important. Protecting minority investors, right? So that is also very, very important. If their interests are not protected, then you'll find the minority investors will not be interested to invest their wealth, and that will not be a good sign for businesses, for upcoming startups and businesses. Similarly, payment of taxes, how easy it is to pay taxes or how complicated it is, that will also determine the ease of doing business in a particular country. Trading across borders, well, there are so many different type of obstacles to trade across borders, so that is something also which is taken into consideration. Contract enforcement and resolving insolvency, all of these are important. Now just remember one thing, though there are 10 parameters whose scores are taken into account to arrive at the final score, but apart from this 10, we have 2 more parameters which are considered, which were considered at one point of time, namely, for example, employing workers and contracting with the government. Okay, these 2 parameters earlier used to be there, employing workers, and second parameter is what? Contracting with the government, but we get to see that these are no longer included in the score and the ranking. So originally there were 12, right now only 10 are taken into consideration. Okay, and this particular index, it will rank countries on the basis of distance to frontier, on the basis of their distance to frontier score that highlights the gap of an economy with respect to the global best practice. Okay, so basically here it is relative in nature. So whenever a particular score is being given to a country, that is on the basis of how far that country's performance is with regards to the best performance. For example, a score of 75 will mean an economy was 25 percentage points away from the frontier which is constructed by the best performance across all economies and across all time. So if a country is scoring 75, which means whatever score or whichever country has scored the highest, unse 25 points piche. So highest is always 100%. And if another country is scoring 75, that means that country is 25 percentage points behind the top scorer. Okay, this is how it is measured. Now coming to the ease of doing business report 2020, very, very important. So let us quickly go through it. What does it talk about? So World Bank, it has released its ease of doing business report 2020. Now what does it do? It measures the performance of countries across 10 different dimensions in the 12-month period which ended around May 1st to 2019. Now according to this report, we get to see New Zealand has retained its first position. Remember this, New Zealand has maintained its first position, whereas the worst is for Somalia, which ranks at 190th position. So best is New Zealand, worst is Somalia. So natural question is, where is India? So India is now placed at 63rd position. India's place is at 63rd position, and that too in 2019 out of 190 countries. So it has made an improvement of around 14 places from its 77th position in 2018. So in the 2018 report, it had a rank of 77. In the 2019 report, it has a rank of 63. So there has been an improvement by around 14 places. India's score has improved from 67.23 in the previous year. Now it has improved to 71 this year. Also, we get to see that India, for the third consecutive year, was present in the list of 10 economies where the business climate has improved the most. So India is among the top 10 economies in terms of improvement of the ease of doing business. Okay? And we get to see India was, for the third consecutive year, it was present among this particular list of 10 economies where the business climate has improved the most. Okay? Now with regards to India's performance, let us see the essential features of India's performance are. So first of all, India's parameters or India's ranking, it has improved basically on the basis of 4 parameters. There are 4 such parameters जिनका अच्छा score होने के वजह से we get to see India's ranking has improved by 14 places. Now which are those parameters? Number 1 is starting a business. Already we had seen starting a business is very, very important. So India has made starting a business easier by fully integrating multiple application forms into a general corporation form. So that is how India has tried to make it much easier to start a business in India. Secondly, dealing with construction permits. For example, building a warehouse cost around 4% of the warehouse value as compared to 5.7% in the previous year. Okay, so we get to see dealing with construction permits, that has also been made easier, plus trading across borders and resolving insolvency. All of these are the fields where India has made great progress. So here also we get to see for trading across borders, there is a single electronic platform which is called as improved electronic submission, and there are improved electronic submission methods for documents and upgrades to port infrastructure, import, export processes. All of these have become much easier. Anyway, so what you have to remember is this: the 4 parameters on the basis of which India has shown considerable improvement. Another thing that you should look at is India continues to maintain its first position among the Southeast Asian countries or the South Asian countries. India continues to maintain its first position among the South Asian countries. That is something you should remember, because it was in the 6th position in 2014. Now it is in the first position among the South Asian countries. Till now, it was only Delhi and Mumbai whose scores were being taken into consideration, but the World Bank has said from the next report onwards, even Kolkata as well as Bengaluru, that their scores will also be taken into consideration. So ease of doing business, if that is prepared for the entire country, then the cities which will contribute their scores, that should be distributed across the country, not just Delhi and Mumbai. So that is why Kolkata and Bengaluru, their conditions for ease of doing business will also be considered in coming to the conclusion regarding the country. The last question that we have is on this particular term that is called as the extended producer responsibility. Now this question is from environment. It was asked in the year 2019 UPSC prelims. So in India, extended producer responsibility was introduced as an important feature in which of the following? So in which of the following do we get to see the introduction of the extended producer responsibility? Now, extended producer responsibility, most of you would have heard it with regards to plastic. But here also you get to see there is something called as the Recycled Plastic Manufacturing and Usage Rules 1999. But that is incorrect. Because the rule that you're thinking of, that was with regards to only plastic, but this is recycled plastic manufacturing and usage. That is incorrect. Then what is correct? Now, out of the given options, we get to see answer should be C. E-Waste Management and Handling Rules 2011. E-Waste Management and Handling Rules 2011. That is the correct answer. So let's try to understand. Okay. Extended producer responsibility, it is the main feature of the E-Waste. Extended producer responsibility, that is the main feature of the E-Waste Management and Handling Rules 2011, where the producer of electrical and electronic equipment, it has the responsibility of managing such equipments after its end of life. So just try to understand what is meant by this extended producer responsibility. Is the main feature of the E-Waste Management and Handling Rules 2011. So this is where I was also referring to, Kate. What happens is extended producer responsibility is mainly applicable in case of plastic, but we also get to see it is also applicable in case of e-waste, the management and handling rules 2011, where we get to see the producer of electrical and electronic equipment will have the responsibility of managing such equipment even after the end of its life. Thus, the producer is responsible for their products over once the consumer discards them. It is the producer who is responsible for their products once the consumer has discarded them. Okay, the concept of this EPR of the extended producer responsibility was also introduced in the Plastic Waste Management and Handling Rules 2016. Okay, so this concept of extended producer responsibility, though now we get to see it is applicable in case of the e-waste management and handling rules 2011, but it was actually introduced in the Plastic Waste Management and Handling Rules 2016. So here I have mentioned it was initially introduced in the Plastic Waste Management and Handling Rules 2016. Here we also get to see option B is talking about recycled plastic manufacturing and usage rules to 1999. That is incorrect. Thus, the correct answer should be e-waste management and handling rules 2011, in which extended producer responsibility was also the main feature. Okay? So these are the things that you should be aware of. We have looked at 5 important questions, and I would expect that you revise all of these along with the other questions that we have discussed in the previous class. And we will come back with another new episode and with 5 new questions from the previous year UPSC prelims examination. So if you have liked this video, please like it, share it, and also comment and let us know your feelings regarding, your opinions regarding this initiative. Also subscribe to Aptiplus's YouTube channel for more such informative videos. So we'll meet again in the next video. Till then, stay safe, take care, and study hard. Thank you so much.
I'm an icon, man. And my girl about a 10. I should fuck her in the Benz.